Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to this Yale SOM online student panel. I'm Bruce DelMonico, Assistant Dean for Admissions here at the School of Management. We're thrilled that you're joining us for this session. I'd like to start by just wishing everyone safety and good health in this very challenging time. I hope you're doing well, staying safe, and taking care of each other. We have an hour here with 4 current Yale SOM students. And the goal for the day is to just try and share as much information as possible about Yale SOM, the mission, the community, what we do here to educate leaders for business and society. There is no set agenda, no talking points. We really want to focus on what's of interest and import to you. So please use the Q&A feature of the Zoom session, be able to submit questions to us, and we will try to get to as many questions as possible. If we don't get to your questions, please, we'll try to do that afterwards. Please feel free to email us at the MBA admissions mailbox, but we will try to get through as many as we can. So before we get started, I would love to just have our students introduce themselves, say a little bit about themselves, maybe what they're doing for Yale SOM, what they're doing now, just so people have a sense of who's on the panel. So Adam, if you want to take it away.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. Wanted to introduce myself. My name's Adam Hogue. I'm a second-year MBA student, originally from Cleveland, Ohio, but have been in Boston since college. And before SOM, I spent a few years doing strategy consulting for public school districts and a few years doing human capital consulting, mostly for corporate clients. Last summer, I worked at a sustainable agriculture startup called Indigo Agriculture, working with their chief people officer, and I'll be returning there to be in a similar role this summer. And then I guess at SOM, I'm part of the co-leader of the Human Capital Club. I'm a career advisor for first-year students and an admissions interviewer, and I also am part of the hockey club, although I'm not very good. That's been a learning curve.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Ayushi. I am a second-year joint MBA MPH student here at SOM and the School of Public Health. Before coming to Yale, I worked in healthcare technology, specifically within healthcare consulting, or health policy consulting, excuse me. And then here at SOM, last summer, I guess, for my internship, I worked in innovation consulting in Boston. And then after SOM, I'll be going to health policy consulting in Chicago. And here at school, I'm really involved in the Design and Innovation Club. I'm one of the co-leaders. I'm also really involved in VITA, which is the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Group. That's a New Haven group. And also really passionate about lots of our dance and cultural events as well.
Hey everyone, I'm Ryan Collins. I am also a second-year MBA student. I'm originally from Milford, Connecticut, just about 20 minutes down the road from New Haven. And just before SOM, I was a humanitarian aid worker. I mostly worked in refugee camps in Ethiopia and Kenya with the International Rescue Committee. This past summer, I did my internship as a strategy consultant with EY, and I'll be going back to do strategy consulting with EY starting next year. At SOM, I'm a member of the Social Impact Consulting Club, Nonprofit Board Fellows, Global Social Entrepreneurship, a lot of the social impact clubs. I'm also on the hockey team, and I am even worse than Adam.
Hi everyone, my name is Vicky Zhang. I'm also a second-year MBA student here at Yale SOM. I'm originally from Philadelphia, and pre-SOM I worked in the financial services industry, and post-SOM I plan on doing the same. While here at school, I'm the co-chair of the Economic Development Club, as well as the Net Impact Club that we have, and I'm really interested in anything social impact related that the school really does.
Great. Thank you so much, Adam, Ayushi, Ryan, and Vicky, for joining us. Thanks for those introductions. As I mentioned initially, so there's no presentation, no formal remarks on this session. It's really just to answer the questions you might have. Before we get to them, there are lots of questions coming in. Please continue to send them via the Q&A feature of the session. Before we get to those, I would just want to note there are a couple of questions already about whether there is a presentation and specifically about sort of upcoming round 3 deadline. I imagine many of you who are on the session today are thinking about applying this application cycle. Our standard round 3 deadline is coming up in a couple weeks on April 14th. We have, because of the current pandemic, we've actually created a second deadline on May 27th, which we're calling round 3 extended, which is maybe a little bit confusing. It's a separate round. So for those of you who are thinking of applying this application cycle, we would encourage you, if you can, if you have your materials ready, to apply for the April 14th round coming up soon. But if your plans have been disrupted, if you've had a test taking interruption, or you had to relocate and for those reasons have had to sort of push back your application preparation process, we do have the May 27th round 3 extended round as well. And so that's another option, another opportunity for you. I would say just a week ago, last Friday, we had a separate panel, an application tips panel, that went through the application with a specific eye toward round 3 and provided advice. It was from the admissions committee. So if you are thinking about applying round 3, this is more from the student perspective and the student experience. But if you're looking for those admissions tips, that panel session was recorded and should be available on the website. We also emailed it around, so you should be able to have access to that as well. And I would recommend that for those of you who are applying in round 3. So that's just a short little sort of context setting. Before I get to the questions, one other thing I know I would just like to say on the outset, I imagine there will be questions about the current the COVID-19 situation. All of our students, as you can see, we're Zooming in online, but the students are all remote. I'm remote as well. We're all off campus, and the rest of the semester will be happening is happening online. So I'm sure there'll be questions about that aspect of the experience. From the school perspective, I imagine there are questions about what things will look like in the fall. Will school resume on schedule and on campus? We're planning for that. We're expecting and hoping that will happen, but we're also currently putting in contingency plans that are being worked out. And we don't have anything set yet because there's still a lot of uncertainty, but hopefully in the near future, we will have some more definition around what the fall will look like if it's not possible for everybody to be on campus in the start of school in August. Again, that's what we're planning for. That's what we're hoping for. We're also putting together contingency plans in case that's not possible. And we will update everybody with what those look like as soon as there's more definition around that. So that was just a little sort of preface and a little prelude because I'm sure that's on everybody's minds. With that, having said that, I'd love to just jump into the questions. And the first one that I'm seeing that may be more general to everybody. And again, I would I'd say tell the panelists, feel free to answer any questions that speak to you. Everybody doesn't have to answer all of them. I'm sure we want to try and get through as many questions as possible. But the first one is simply, why did you choose Yale SOM? So I'd love to open up to the panel and get some thoughts about why you decided to join our community.
Sure, I'll go. So I think I mentioned in my intro, I was a humanitarian aid worker before this. I've always worked in humanitarian aid and international development. And that's kind of my long-term goal, to get back into that world. But in the short term, I wanted to spend some time in the private sector. So I was looking for a way to get both of those things I need, sort of like the hard business skills and also the contextual knowledge, so I can bring it back to the nonprofit world when I go back. So I was mostly looking at joint degrees, places where I could get an MBA and also an MPP or an MPA. And Yale was kind of the only pure MBA program I applied to, because first, the social impact and international aspects are sort of ingrained in the curriculum here and sort of the student body in general. And two, I really like the fact that in the second year, I could take whatever classes I wanted outside of the business school. So I am taking at least half my classes in year 2 at the Jackson Institute, which is our global affairs school. Either my classes are purely there or they're cross-listed classes between SOM and the International Affairs School. So I'm sort of getting that international development and aid knowledge that I would have gotten with the joint degree without having to take the foundational classes that I already took in undergrad with outspending another year of time and tuition on it. So that's the main reason for here. Also, I like the people. The location's great. The building is very pretty.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. Any other thoughts, Ayushi?
Yeah, kind of based off Ryan's point, I was applying exclusively to joint degree programs. I knew I wanted to do a healthcare degree in addition to my MBA. And what I was really looking for there was an MBA program that would not only respect, but also like incredibly value joint degrees. And I think that's definitely the case at SOM, with it being an interdisciplinary program and one of the programs with the highest numbers of joint degree students. We have not only public health, but forestry, we have Jackson Affairs, we have law students, we have so many different types of people who are interested in various things, but are all coming to SOM to get the sort of business aspects of their education. That was really appealing to me, sort of on the professional side. And on the personal side, when I interacted with people who are applying to SOM, when I interacted with current students, I just found it to be a really lovely and warm community, and I really wanted to be a part of it.
Great. Thank you, Ayushi. And that actually might lead into the next question that we're getting in, which is, you and Ryan both touched on this a little bit, but how would you just, talked about community, how would you describe the Yale SOM community? And are there any anecdotes that you could point to that sort of are indicative or emblematic of the Yale SOM community?
Yeah, I can take this one. I think sort of when I think about sort of my classmates and the community more broadly, there's sort of three things that I think about. I think first is curious. I think people are like genuinely interested in how the world works and sort of the impact that they're having on the world. And I think sort of similar to what Ayushi and Ryan were saying, I also come from interests that sit sort of in between disciplines. Education and human capital are both very interdisciplinary challenges. So that the appreciation to not just focus on one discipline or one perspective is I found to be really valuable and really sort of energizing. And the second piece is humble. I think a lot of my classmates are like really appreciate the complexity of some of the challenges that they're trying to solve. And with that comes sort of an appreciation for sort of how hard it is to work on them. So I think humility is a piece that I've found throughout most of the community, and it's been really refreshing.
Thank you, Adam. Any other thoughts about sort of the community piece and examples of sort of that might sort of represent the community?
Yeah, I can talk to that a little bit too. Definitely echo everything that's been said, especially Adam's comments about the students. But I think the professors in particular here at SOM, I found them to be incredibly open to having conversations outside the classroom, which is something I was definitely looking for when I joined SOM. I've gotten to do a few independent studies with them, so they're definitely open to helping you sort of figure out your own academic path here as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Vicki. And again, maybe continuing on the academic theme, one of the questions that's come in is about academics, and a question specifically about what are your favorite professors and what are your favorite classes? And so I know, and I imagine many of them will be at SOM, but I know given the sort of the joint degree or the interest in sort of working across Yale, imagine they might be outside of SOM too, but I'd love to hear some thoughts about favorite professors and favorite classes.
I can start that conversation. One of my favorites has definitely been the interpersonal dynamics class I got to take with Heidi Brooks. It's not your traditional class. It's not what I thought I was going to be taking when I came to business school, but it's definitely the ones I think that's changed my perception of how I'm going to be a leader in the business world the most.
I want to put in a plug for global social entrepreneurship. It's the best class I've taken here. Tony Sheldon teaches it. It's great. Half of it is him sort of lecturing on social enterprise around the world, but the other half is really experiential. So you get a group of 4 or 5 of you and you do a pro bono consulting project for a social enterprise somewhere in the developing world. We worked with like a group of street artists in Sao Paulo that were helping build an app to help recycling collectors get an income there. And it's just really awesome. You spend a semester working with your team in this organization, getting to know them well. Then you spend 2 weeks on the ground working with them. And overall, I think I just learned a lot of skills, and it was just the best experience I've had at school for sure.
Yeah, I know this is the first course and everyone has to take it, but managing groups and teams is something that really sticks with me. So the first week of courses, every first year only takes managing groups and teams. It's a full-time course for 1 week. And you get put together in your learning teams of 8 or 9 folks who you'll be working with for the rest of the core curriculum on projects and assignments. And you basically learn about organizational behavior, but also get thrown into all of these simulations to see how you react. And then sort of like afterwards, you debrief a lot and get a lot of feedback. And it really highlights sort of the gap between sort of how you think you're perceived and how people are actually perceiving you in a really structured way. And it's an emotionally taxing week because there's a lot of feelings, but I think it's something where I've learned one of the classes where I've learned the most about myself and sort of some of the learnings that I continue to take with me during my internship and other group work. So that's one of the ones that is definitely gonna stick with me.
I'd love to throw in a non-SOM class as a joint degree. One of the classes I'm taking this semester is actually cross-listed between African American Studies and History. It's a graduate seminar. It's called Medicine and Empire, and it's about the role of slavery in the development of healthcare in the Americas, which is a really heavy, tough topic. But as someone who hopes to be a healthcare executive in the future, I think it's so important for me to understand this history. Especially when I want to work with vulnerable populations. And so I really appreciated SOM and YSPH's flexibility in allowing me to take classes that are outside of both of those schools, especially when we have amazing faculty in all kinds of disciplines here at Yale. So my professor is Dr. Carolyn Roberts. She's done incredible work in this field. It's a really challenging class, but it's one that has taught me so much.
That's great. Thank you all for that. And I think it's the nice job of giving a sense of the diversity of classes and diversity of opportunities. And that's very, very helpful. And Adam, you touched on, it's been a challenging week, and I think this is the first week back of classes after spring break, if I have that timeline right. So I want to get to that and what the sort of the new normal is like here at SOM. But before that, there were a few other more general questions that I want to touch on, and one of them, in addition to the academic experience, there were a number of questions about what club life is like and what the role of clubs in your experience here at Yale SOM. So I'd love to get a sense, other than sort of, fighting over who's the sort of the least skilled hockey player, although that's certainly fair game as well. Love to hear what, again, what clubs you're involved with that you mentioned earlier on, and how that's been incorporated into your SOM experience.
Yeah, definitely. I would love to start that. As I mentioned in my intro, I'm the co-chair of the Economic Development and Net Impact Clubs this year. And I'd say that they serve sort of two similar roles in that it's all about creating the community around social impact, but also really helping through the recruitment process, helping us make the connections, doing job tracks, so on and so forth. And then for economic development, we definitely do a lot of what we call lunch and learns, which is where we have either professors or local development professionals in the New Haven community come in to really talk about their professional experience to the students. And those have been pretty well received. We actually did one with the dean this semester, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about clubs as well. I'm one of the co-leaders of the Design and Innovation Club, as I said earlier. And the D&I Club, we like to say, is the only professional and social club at SOM. So there are two different parts of us. On the professional side, we have a curriculum in the fall that we deliver weekly to any students that are interested in pursuing D&I fields, or that are maybe think that those skills would be useful in whatever field they're going to go into. And as part of that, in addition to the curriculum, we have workshops, we have speakers, we have sort of hands-on activities. And then outside of that, we really just want to work on increasing MBA's creative confidence. We know that creativity is a skill that's really valued in the business world. So we want to make sure SOMers are prepared and have practiced while they're here. So we'll do all kinds of fun events to kind of get people to loosen up and express themselves. One of our favorites is called Dippin' Dots and Draw, where we bring in a live model and we draw them and we eat Dippin' Dots, and it's just a good time and kind of gets us to do something a little bit different with our brains.
I've used clubs mostly to get involved in New Haven. I grew up in the area, so when I was coming back here for school, it was very important to me to sort of get involved in the community and not stay in the Yale bubble the entire time. So I've been on nonprofit board fellows, which pairs MBA students with local nonprofits, and you sit on their board of directors for 2 years. So I've been on the board of directors of the United Way, which has been a great way to know about the community and a lot of the initiatives going on. I've also done social impact consulting, where you basically do a pro bono consulting job for a local nonprofit. We work with the Connecticut Mental Health Care Center. So yeah, it's been a good way to make sure that I'm still getting involved in New Haven and also learning from things for myself as well as giving back. I'll let Adam handle hockey because he's been there longer than me.
Yeah, so on the hockey side, I am a very casual hockey player. That was not true until last year. But I will plug the club. It's a really good experience. There are lots of people who have never played before, so it's just a really good way to sort of make connections with your classmates in a way that is very far out from the classroom, but also sort of have this collective experience of being on the very steep part of a learning curve together, which is not always the case in a lot of the other day-to-day experiences. And so that's been a great experience. And then the other club that I've been involved in is I'm a co-leader of the Human Capital Club. And I think in addition to sort of faculty lunch and learns, sort of like Vicky was describing, we do a lot of alumni engagement as well. So we've had 2 panels this year with, I think, probably 10 total alums speaking about their careers, their experiences at SOM, and sort of how they have figured out the different twists and turns that their careers taken, the skills they've developed, and the types of work that they do, just to sort of raise awareness of the different human capital fields, from people analytics to HR business partners to more leadership consulting and executive search. So that's been a really good way to sort of get to know alums and bring them back and get them engaged on campus.
That's great. Thank you all for those insights, sharing a little bit about your experiences on the club side, the non-academic side. I want to look back. Actually, Ryan, you mentioned the fact that you're from the area. I am as well, so I know we share that connection. But there were a couple of questions about how the school is connected to the local community. You gave a great example. I'd love to see if anyone has any other examples about connections to the local New Haven community. And also more broadly, there were questions about what New Haven's like generally. It's considered a smaller city, but how you've experienced being not just at Yale, but in New Haven as well.
Yeah, I can talk about that. So the first part, connections between Yale and New Haven, I think one that SOM students in particular can take advantage of is the organization I was talking about earlier, VITA. So it's an IRS-run group where we have different chapters in each city, and the New Haven one is run by Yale students. It's actually run by the undergrads, but this year, one of the things I and the other SOM liaisons for VITA wanted to work on was really increasing the number of SOM students who are volunteering their time. And so what VITA does, to give you a bit of background, is we help low-income New Haven residents file their taxes for free, allowing them to get tax refunds that they are entitled to. So it's a really quick, easy way to give someone financial assistance. And so last year we had about 4 SOM students volunteering with VITA, and this year we have closer to 20. So that's been really exciting to see that growth, and we hope it continues. And I think it's also a really cool opportunity to use some of the skills we learn in terms of financial planning, accounting, things along those lines. We have those skill sets within us as MBA students, and so to be able to use those to help New Haveners has been really rewarding. And then the second part of your question, Bruce, was what's New Haven like? And I really love New Haven. I spent most of my life before this in the Midwest, so was a little skeptical of moving out to the East Coast, but I've really enjoyed my 2 years here. I think most of us live in East Rock, which is a really lovely residential neighborhood that's right by SOM, mostly grad students and professors. And you walk around outside, maybe not right now that much, but pre-COVID, when you'd walk around, there's a lot of people hanging out, enjoying the outdoors, enjoying New Haven, tons of great restaurants around. So I've had a lovely 2 years here.
Thank you very much, Vicki. Do you have want to add some stuff?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a few additional opportunities. So through the Economic Development Club, we also have what we're calling the Small Business Development Initiative, which is where, similar to what Social Impact Consulting Club does, we consult these small businesses in the community on how they can sort of increase their revenue, their profitability, so on and so forth. I'd also say that Net Impact tries to do a lot via the community as well, again, through our speaker series, and really giving these speakers exposure. Through some of the symposiums that we run, like we always try to purchase from small businesses as well. So I'd say there's a lot of different ways that we connect with the community.
Great, thank you, Vicki. Thank you for all. And I should say, I should have commented on the backgrounds too. So I have more of a plain background, but just for those who haven't visited campus, Ryan's background is the Yale SOM campus and the courtyard at night. Ayushi actually has a background that's inside of Yale SOM. Yeah, get a good view of it. And Vicki actually, that's the Beinecke Rare Book Library on main campus or central campus, which has lots of very important rare books, including I think 2 copies of the Gutenberg Bible. So that's a view from the inside. Adam and I have nothing to offer, unfortunately. There's a lot more to touch on, which I hope we get to, including career development and sort of the alumni connections. But I would like to, a couple of you have already referenced, so Adam and Vicki, I think most recently, the fact that the community, the importance of the community, but the fact that the community is taking a different form right now because we are all engaging remotely. We are all off-site. The rest of the classes for the semester are happening online, and I do think, but I think this was the first week back from spring break, if I have that right, although I'm starting to lose track of time. But I would love to get your thoughts about what this period has been like to be remote, to be engaging each other exclusively or I assume predominantly online. I know a number of people are actually in New Haven and maybe are finding ways to connect up in person, but in some ways. But I guess that's the other part of the question. How have things been so far? But also, how are you all, and how's the school working to keep the community engaged and kind of intact?
I can kick off. So I think there are, so I'll talk a little bit about the academic side and a little bit about sort of the social side and community side. On the academic side, I think the transition has been pretty seamless. I mean, obviously the dynamic is a little bit different being on a Zoom call for class rather than being in person. But I think it's a very humanizing experience too. So I think the everyone is very engaged and participatory. I think the professors have been really well prepared for delivering the content in a slightly different way. So I think it feels and looks a little bit different, but I think it's been great so far. And yeah, so I think it's been like a week or two. And I think my classes have mostly been discussion based. So I think those are probably a little bit more challenging than a typical lecture as well. So I think that's been really encouraging and exciting. On the social side, I think it takes a little bit more planning. You don't have the same, bump into you interactions on the street or in Evans Hall like you would normally. but I still have my standing happy hour with my cohort mates, a couple of my cohort mates that we've been doing for the last 2 years on Monday evenings. I'm playing euchre with a few of my friends that Ryan may be joining on Saturday, which is a very obscure Midwestern card game. So I think it takes a little bit of more effort, but I think I've been really energized by the ways that folks have been staying connected, even though we're a little bit more distributed than normal.
Yeah, I'd echo a lot of what Adam said on the social side. It's forced us to get pretty creative. Luckily, we've had sort of like a year and a half to build bonds and friendships to like sort of help us hunker down through this. I will say, Ayushi mentioned a lot of us live in East Rock. It's like a little residential neighborhood close to here. A lot of people are just sort of wandering around the neighborhood right now to not be indoors for a couple minutes. So you see a lot of people from across the street and have like a lot of conversations from a few meters away, which has been nice. But yeah, everyone's been getting super creative. Lots of Zoom happy hours. I'm in this euchre group, which I don't understand, but I'll figure it out. I miss sports and there's no sports. So I started a group to watch marble races on YouTube. That's exciting, but yeah, it's been a challenge, but it's fun to see how people are adapting.
Yeah, I think the current situation also allows us to take advantage of a few things. From a club perspective, my club, Economic Development, just held a lunch and learn with 2 of our professors in economics, and I don't think we would have been able to pull it off on such short notice if it was in person. And I think we had a turnout of over 100 people, which is higher than we normally get as well, given that I think a lot of people care about the economy right now, but also they have a lot more time and flexibility to sort of join these Zoom meetings with us.
That's great. Thank you all. I appreciate those insights, and I know everyone has to be creative and try and figure out sort of new ways to engage. It seems like you're doing a good job of that, both here in New Haven and farther flung. So lots of other questions coming in. Try to get to as many as we can. The common thread, a few questions that have to do with the recruiting process and so the Career Development Office specifically. And I'd love to get a sense of your experiences with the recruiting process and what that's like, and how, you know, both how sort of the school, the CDO has helped, students, alumni, others, what that looks like more generally.
Yeah, so I did consulting recruiting, which is probably the most formal and structured of all of them, besides maybe investment banking. And there's a lot of resources. So I mean, all of the big firms come to campus to do info sessions, coffee chats, practice interviews. The CDO offers a lot of resources. They have consultants that come in that'll do a mock case interview with you, a mock behavioral interview. They'll look at your resumes and tell you how to sort of tailor them more towards a specific consulting firms. The best resource I thought was the Consulting Club, which is a student-run club. It's all run by second-year students who did their internships at some of the leading consulting firms. And they walk you through the entire process from day one. Like, how do you network? How do you reach out to these people? They really dig down deep on how to do the case interview. And if you're starting from like no experience at all, which I was, it's like a really good resource just to hear from people who have been through this a lot. And also just because the amount of resources are so vast, it's like drinking out of a fire hose. They really help you sort of make sense of what you need to be doing, what you should be prioritizing. And generally people are just super helpful at all. All the second years who had consulted over the summer are happy to help you with the case interviews whenever you want. They sign up. You can reach out to anyone. The alumni at all these firms are very helpful too. They're all happy to talk to you. So there's, in that specific case, there's just a ton of resources, but they're really good about sort of getting you set up and down the road.
Yeah, I'd love to add on to a part of that, which was the alumni. So I also recruited for consulting, but was recruiting for higher consulting. So it was a little bit more differentiated of a path. And I had this really interesting series of events happen where I was assigned an alumni mentor through the Women in Management Club. and she turned out to be working for the company that I later applied to for full-time recruiting. And so having her as a resource during that process was so valuable, because I was able to get a better sense of what is her job. Is it something I like? Is it something I'm prepared for? And then when I was interviewing, to be able to have her feedback was also really great. And I think that's true not only across the SOM alumni network, but across the Yale alumni network. I've reached out to people who haven't gone to SOM, haven't even gone to the School of Public Health, and we just have that Yale connection, and people have always been really willing to help. So I think that's been a huge, huge asset when it comes to recruiting.
Yeah, I just want to +1 the alumni support. I was recruiting for more, I think more like off the beaten path roles, mostly like startups and sort of in human capital or education. And the alumni were so helpful. I spent like the first half of my first year just reaching out to alums to help sort of define the different types of roles that I might be interested in, and really clarify sort of what I would need to be doing at SOM to sort of position myself well for them. And just to give you an example, one of the alums spoke that I connected with spoke on an orientation panel, a career panel during our orientation. And I talked to her for a few minutes afterwards, and we ended up having coffee. She was the executive director of a big education nonprofit in Massachusetts. And we ended up having coffee like 2 weeks later, and she spent 2 hours just talking about sort of my background, her background, how she made different career decisions, what the role that SOM played in all of that. So that's the type of sort of like very high touch, really valuable relationships that I've found the alumni to be interested in.
That's great. Vicki, sorry to interrupt. I'll let you go.
Oh, no worries. I just wanted to add that I've also been able to leverage a lot of my classmates, especially for those people that are going into the non-traditional recruiting. I think it's a lot harder to sort of find your way into that network and to be aware of those opportunities. So sort of leveraging your classmates. And also, I don't know if it was mentioned yet, but a lot of clubs do job treks. So the Economic Development Club did one. Net Impact was thinking about doing one before this COVID stuff happened. So I'd say definitely leverage the job treks as well.
I think that's great advice. Thank you all for your answers. And picking up a little bit on that, Ayushi and Adam, I think specifically talked about alumni and their support. There is a question about the alumni network more generally. And Adam, I think you talked a little bit, broadened it and talked a little bit about the quality of the alumni network. But if you have other ways and other examples of ways in which you've connected with alumni, would love to hear that, and other ways in which the alumni have been helpful to you in your SOM experience.
I think the strongest connections are where you have some sort of mutual interest. So an example of that is the Design and Innovation Club really has a tight alumni network within the SOM alumni network. So once I became a leader this year and was able to talk to previous D&I club leaders about the experiences they've had and some of their career trajectories, I found that to be a really valuable conversation, because we had this like shared passion for design and innovation, and that was kind of a jumping off point. And I've heard similar stories like that from my friends here at SOM, as if you start with something that you share in common, the alumni kind of remembers, I think, their time at SOM and has fond memories, and then wants to sort of invest in that connection a bit more. So I found that to be a really fruitful way to connect with the alumni.
Yeah, when I first got into SOM, they'll often put an alumni in touch with each new admit. And for me, they put me in touch with Neil Kinney-Geyer, who's the president of Mercy Corps, which is one of the biggest aid NGOs on earth, and like an organization I've always really respected. I was just sort of blown away that he even wanted to talk to me. And then he took like an hour and a half to just chat about sort of where I was in Ethiopia, what I wanted out of SOM. And we've like been in touch occasionally since. So like, it just blew me away from the beginning that like an alumni would talk to someone they don't know or they know nothing about just because of that connection. I've seen that a lot since then.
That's great, thank you. And actually, sort of to build on that, there was one question, that I'll read it. I'm excited to see so many MBA students interested in social issues and social impact. would you say that that is typical of the broader SOM class? And I'd love to get some thoughts about that, both just from students who want to go into social impact directly, but also maybe those who want to go into consulting and finance and elsewhere, how that informs their experience and just the general SOM experience overall.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things about SOM is that the social impact topic really can't be ignored in any conversations that we have in the classroom or socially. I think that it's really in sort of the DNA of the culture that we have here to be concerned about these topics, in addition to being concerned about traditional business topics as well. I see that a lot through the clubs. Obviously, I self-selected into ones that were heavier social impact related, but I think even the traditional clubs like consulting, there's the social impact consulting aspect of it. With finance, there's impact investing. So there's just a lot of different opportunities to get exposure to it, regardless of what your professional interests are.
That's great. Thank you, Vicki. There are a lot more questions, a lot of different directions to go about sort of travel and also experience and your other experiences on campus. I would love to just pick out one though for the moment. We'll get to as many as we can in the last 20 or so minutes we have. Since I'm in admissions, I'm kind of gravitating towards a question that touches on the application process. There's a question about what differentiated Yale SOM from other business schools during the application process. If you can think back to that time and kind of what stood out for you about Yale SOM.
I think for me, sorry if I interrupted someone, for me, it was the conversations I had with current students. So when I was applying, I found that the SOM students were, first of all, like very kind and very willing to speak to me and spend a lot of time answering questions, talking on the phone. But then on top of that, we're very candid with their responses. Like when I asked, what's something that you have found challenging about SOM, like they would respond honestly. And that was different from a lot of the other business schools that I was speaking to. I often felt like those responses were like, when you answer that you have a weakness in an interview, that's not really a weakness. I thought it was kind of like cop-out answers. So that was something that I really appreciated, was the candor of the students and willingness to actually help by providing honest answers.
Yeah, I think the main thing that drew me to SOM was, I think, sort of this focus on leaders for business and society. So just building off of sort of what Vicki was describing in terms of different social impact, like how social impact shows up in the community. I think it shows up in the academics. So we have part of the core curriculum is a course called State and Society, which is all about sort of the role that the intersection of business and government and the social sector. And we talk about topics from apartheid in South Africa to segregation in the US to the gender wage gap. And that's like a 7-week course. And there's, that's only 3 of, I think, maybe 8 or 9 topics. So it's really expansive, and we get into some really challenging topics. I think so you see it in the academics, but you also see it in the student body. I think from my conversations during the admissions process, and I think this has been true throughout my time at SOM, there are definitely folks who are explicitly focused on recruiting for social impact careers, but even the folks who are going into more sort of traditional MBA careers like investment banking are sort of doing it. Like the 2 of my friends who I know who are going into investment banking, one is explicitly going into sort of the public sector group because she's interested in how city governments finance public services. She comes from sort of a teaching background. And another one is going into the natural resources group because she wants to focus on sort of clean energy finance in the long term. So I think even for the folks who are going into sort of more traditional, well-worn MBA career paths, I think there's a layer deeper of sort of the interest that's driving them. And that sort of purpose is something that's really, really energizing, and I think has continued to be true during my time at school.
That's great. Thank you, Adam and Ayushi, for those insights. Love to shift gears a little bit. There are a couple questions I mentioned about sort of travel and international experiences, both recognizing that right now is not a time where that's happening, but that's something that's important to the school and to your experience here, especially the school's emphasis on being very global. So I'd love it if you would be able to share your any international experiences you've had and kind of how that has influenced and been incorporated into your time at SOM. I don't know if I need to cold call. Nope, got some takers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I already, Vicky, go ahead. All right, fine.
I was just going to give another plug for GSE, but go ahead, Ryan.
I was also going to plug GSE. Yeah, I already told my GSE experience, so Vicky, you can go.
Yeah, so similar to Ryan, I did a global social entrepreneurship experience. I went to India this past winter, which was great. But then in addition to that, I mentioned before that I've done some independent research. So through that process, I also got to go to Sierra Leone last March to really do some field research for one of the development projects, and got to do some of the testing associated with it. So I thought that was pretty unique because it wasn't a formal offering through SOM, but through one of the experiences and connections that I made with one of the professors here, I sort of got that opportunity.
I did one of the international experiences that we offer. I went to Japan last year over spring break and absolutely loved it. I loved it so much that I was TAing the course this year and we were all set to go, but then had to cancel our plans, but thought it was really amazing way to learn about another country's not only business, but also culture, how the two interact, how those interactions kind of play into the global business environment. I don't anticipate doing business in Japan, but if I were to, I feel like I have like a good sort of foundation on which I can build, and I can at least say, hey, I went there for 2 weeks and have been to 3 or 4 cities. So love the experience. Highly recommend any international travel while you're here at SOM.
Great, thank you so much. Appreciate those insights. And obviously there's diversity of opportunities on that front. You mentioned sort of GSE. International experience trip. We have through the Global Network for Advanced Management, we have the Global Network Weeks. They're all part of what the GSR, the Global Studies requirement here at Yale. So everyone has some international experience, some global experience, and usually it's, I think, multiple ones during your time here. So thank you for those examples. Also, and shifting gears a little bit again, also getting lots of questions about the Silver Scholars Program. I know none of you are Silver Scholars, so just quickly, just wanted to touch on that because we are getting a lot of questions about that. For those of you on the session who don't know what that is, Silver Scholars, it's a program that it's been around for maybe 15 or more years. So we were one of the first schools to actually have a direct from undergraduate pipeline where you can go from your last year, your senior year of college, your last year of undergraduate, directly to Yale SOM. So you graduate presumably in the spring, start with us in the fall. It actually spans 3 years. You do the first years of your first academic year with us at Yale, then you do an extended 1-year internship, and then you come back and do your second academic year, which is entirely electives with us at Yale. So over 3 years total, you'll get the MBA, but coming directly from undergraduate. It's not a deferred admission program. You don't work for a couple of years and then go to business school. You come to us directly from undergraduate. I know there may be a lot of you who are out there who are in your senior year, in your last year, thinking about next steps, maybe thinking about, and given the state of the world and the economy, thinking about whether to enter the workforce, to take a job or continue your studies. So if you're thinking about continuing your studies and going, not taking 2 years off or doing some sort of deferred admission, but going directly to business school, the Silver Scholars Program is obviously a very, I think, appealing option. So just a little bit about that, because we have gotten lots of questions, and we're happy to answer more offline through other means, through other media, as you have them. I just wanted to did want to address Silver Scholars. That does speak a little bit to the academic piece. we are getting some other questions about academics, and I'd love to ask maybe the two questions that seem to have bubbled up. One has to do with raw cases and what your experience is with the raw case method, and then one that's a little bit more timely, which is how have the virtual classrooms worked? What's your experience been over the since COVID-19 and since you've had to engage academically on a remote basis? So two somewhat different questions, but touching on academics, if anyone wants to share their thoughts.
Yeah, I'm happy to hop in. On the sort of raw cases and integrated core curriculum, I think it's at least for me been a really good way to be able to understand how to like prioritize and actually like sort through information in a much more practical way like you would in the world. So I think that definitely lives up to it. In the core curriculum, I had never seen accounting before last fall, and by this spring I was working with an ed tech company, a very early stage ed tech startup, and their lead investor to build a financial model to help them with VC fundraising efforts. So if that's not a testament to how much I learned in a very short amount of time, I don't know what is. And then on the sort of shift to the online courses piece, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I think the discussion-based courses that I've had have been, which are most of my courses, have been really engaging. I think part of it is the actual setup. I usually have a grid view, so all of my classmates are looking at me, which makes it a little bit more psychologically like I need to be really on. But it also, I think, seeing professors sort of in their own homes in the same way that you are really humanizes them. Not that, I think they're generally pretty approachable, but I think it has made for a much more sort of egalitarian discussion and back and forth, which has been really, really fun.
Yeah, I'll hop in with another comment on the virtual classes. I've been really sort of grateful and impressed by the accommodations the professors have made for the new format. So I'm TAing State and Society, which is the class that Adam was talking about earlier. And something the professors there have done is pre-recorded the lecture part where they're just conveying information and allow students to watch that before. And then when we come to the live meeting, it's just a shorter amount of time. It's about 40 minutes of discussion. So it's not like the students are sitting there for 80 minutes and only really engaging for 40 of them, which I think can be a bit onerous, especially as a lot of us are having a lot of Zoom time right now. So to allow students the flexibility to watch some part of that on their own time, maybe at 1.5 times speed, like if that's something they're comfortable with, I think that has really allowed the virtual experience to be as great as it possibly can.
That's excellent. Thank you very much. I know we're inside of 10 minutes left. Actually, now 7 minutes left, so we have just a few more questions probably. One that I think I can hopefully answer that also touches on academic experiences about STEM designation. People might have seen that we just recently, as a number of other schools, many other schools have, we achieved STEM designation for certain concentrations with the MBA program. And also for our asset management program, which is a new one-year program that we've recently launched. The question was whether that's available to this year's admitted students, which the answer is yes. Actually, it's available to the current students as well. It's possible to still do that STEM designated concentration if you're in the program already, but certainly for the admitted students, the incoming students for the class of 2022, that will be available. Switching gears again, just jumping out a little bit. There is a question about what life is like for partners and what resources are available. If anyone is able to speak to that, I think that would be wonderful insight as well.
Yeah, I can hop in. My partner was in Boston during my first year, but has been working in New Haven this year. So I've sort of had both experiences. I think the partner community is really robust, and there's a lot of sort of social support there, and a really tight community. The Partners Club organizes lots of different events, from sort of social hours to sort of more like family-focused events. But I think at least my partner, who I think might be watching this online. She's, I think, found a really good group of like 4 or 5 other partners who she's friends with, and they have sort of standing social hours just like I do. She also played hockey this year, so she got to mix it up with some of the students as well. So I think it's been just a really welcoming and inclusive experience for partners, as far as I can tell. So I think it's something that there are definitely lots of resources for, and people are really generous with sort of their learnings and support.
Great, thank you, Adam. Any other thoughts from any of the other panelists on the partner front? We're short on time, so I will jump on to another question. Maybe we have time for 1 or 2 more. One is a more general one. What is the biggest thing that surprised you about life on campus and the Yale SOM community? So something that's maybe, and I'll actually marry that to another question, which was the most, if you can name a standout experience. So those are maybe a little disparate. Maybe I shouldn't combine them, but the biggest surprise and maybe one of the standout experiences here at Yale.
I've got one, so I'll go. This isn't one particular experience, but a set of experiences. Voices, which is something we all do every Monday from 6 to 7:30. It's basically time for us to hear about an impactful moment or story from our classmates' lives. It's all sort of off the record. The norm is that whatever happens at Voices stays at Voices, and that really allows our classmates to open up and be very vulnerable. And my first year, I don't know what happened. Voices just wasn't really on my radar, and I hadn't attended. And then I went for the first time this year, my second year, and was blown away by how generous our classmates are in terms of being willing to share, how vulnerable they were willing to be, and how receptive everyone in the community was. We've heard some incredibly personal stories, and I really feel like I know people better after having attended their Voices, because it's usually something that speaks to them as a person. I've laughed, I've cried, I've sort of had every single emotion in between during Voices talks. So that's something I've really cherished, and something that surprised me in terms of the depth of the sort of emotional experiences that were shared.
Great, thank you, Ayushi. And just to follow up, I imagine Voices is still happening virtually. So I imagine that's another way in which the community is able to stay connected, even though we're physically distant. Any other thoughts or standout experiences to share?
Yeah, I can share an experience that has nothing to do with school. A couple member of my cohorts and I last year wanted to go to a football game because I had never been at a school with a football team. So we got a pickup truck. We went to a hockey rink where they put all the ice shavings outside, and we just filled the back with snow, brought it to sort of the parking lot outside of the Yale Bowl, and had like 50 to 60 people come by for like a tailgate / snowball fight, which was great. Ivy League football tailgating scene was a little disappointing to some people who had gone to Big Ten schools, but I thought it was a lot of fun. And yeah, there's just been like a lot of moments like that have nothing to do with academics or recruiting, and it's very much needed.
Great, thank you, Ryan. We have just 2 minutes left, so as a closing question, I would just ask if any thoughts about what advice you would have for audience members who are starting their MBA journey, exploring schools and thinking about the application process. Any sort of pieces of advice you could share, I'm sure would be welcome.
Yeah, I think talk to students at the different schools that you're looking at. That for me was the best way to sort of get a feel for the culture and the opportunities that are there. And then I would also say use the time. I think the admissions process can be a really powerful tool for understanding yourself and learning things about your own path and your own career. So take the time to do some of the heavy lifting on the introspection side early on, because it'll pay dividends later.
I would say just try to pay attention to where you think the fit is the best for you. I think that was more important to me than I thought it would going in. I started my search process looking at all the rankings and the career reports and the class profile data, and that's helpful. But I think once I started visiting schools and talking to people like Adam says, it becomes very clear pretty quickly where you have a connection, what types of people you have a connection with. And like SOM is a very mission-driven school, and it attracts people that are interested in that. And yeah, that ended up being so much more of an important aspect to me than any of the numbers.
That's great. Thank you. I think that's a wonderful place to stop. We're at the hour mark as itself. The one question I didn't get to, a lot of questions. One I didn't get to is, what's the food scene like at Yale and New Haven, which I'll just answer, it's fantastic. It's a great food community. With that, I want to thank the panelists. So Adam, Ayushi, Ryan, Vicky, for taking the time. I know it's a crazy time, but I really appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts and experiences with the attendees. I want to thank everyone who was on this session. Hopefully it was helpful. Hopefully you got a little bit better sense of what Yale SOM is about, having attended it. For those of you, again, who are thinking about applying in round 3, the April 14th deadline or the extended May 27th deadline, please check out the recording of the application tips chat that happened last Friday. And we also do have a number of other online student panels happening in the coming weeks. So please go on our website under events, and you can register for those student panels that will be more focused on different aspects of the student experience. So thank you again. Hopefully this was helpful, and I look forward to staying connected with all of you. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.